Welcome back once again to yet another read broadcast of one of the classic IB articles from none other than Jamie Fristrom himself of Torpex Games and GameDevBlog.com. It looks like it wasn't until Article 5 that Daniel Cook, the second prolific mind to lend his insight to IB, joined on board. So 5 articles from Jamie, and then 5 articles from Daniel, and then things start to mix up a little bit. Now, I can't express my thanks enough to these two gentlemen for taking the plunge with me and with Industry Broadcast and really kickstarting this project with their names. But enough of that. Let's get on with the show and go over audio article number 4 for a second time, simply titled Crunch, right here on Industry Broadcast. It was hard to find the time to write this column because we're in crunch mode right now. We're putting in 60-hour weeks and we probably won't stop until we hit 0 bugs, which could be 3 months away. Every project I do, I think that this time we'll manage it so that we don't have to crunch, and almost every project I'm wrong. I've worked on a couple of game projects that required almost no overtime, Interplay's Beat the House and Deluxe Wheel of Fortune featuring Vanna White. As you can imagine, they weren't terribly ambitious projects. Everything else required either a little or a lot of crunch. You start talking about crunch with developers and it quickly becomes a holy war with guys saying, you can't be competitive if you don't crunch, on one side, and other guys saying, studies have shown that programmers are at their most effective when they only work N hours a day. Now, I think both camps are right. In rapid development, Steve McConnell cites a study that shows coders being at their most productive when they work 50-hour weeks. After 50, you start seeing diminishing returns as people get tired, start making mistakes, taking more breaks, and eating their catering dinners or whatever. If efficiency is our goal, then we should send everybody home once they put in a 10-hour day. My first few articles make me sound like a big fan of efficiency, when I talked about bang for buck. But there's something more important than efficiency here, and that's return on investment. For example, McDonald's revolutionized fast food by making its burgers ahead of time. If it turned out nobody wanted the burgers, they got thrown away. Efficient? No. But high return on investment? Yes. Similarly, although we're not at our peak efficiency when we're working 60-hour weeks, we are getting more stuff done, and that more stuff may mean the difference between making Christmas or a movie release date or shipping late. It may just get you those intangibles that make your game cross the line from 3 to 4 stars, and that may give you a higher return on investment. Still, I do think that crunch is something we should try to avoid. Steve McConnell has a good rule of thumb. Don't schedule for overtime. If you schedule people out as if they're only going to work 40-hour weeks, when things go wrong, you can use overtime to catch up. It's important to differentiate crunch from death march. With crunch, you achieve your goals, you ship, or you catch up to where you're supposed to be, and you stop crunching. With a death march, it never ends. You get to your ship date, and it gets pushed out. You get to another ship date, and it gets pushed out again. The overtime never stops, because you're always really close to your supposed destination. The death march is the result of piss-poor management. A crunch is a tool wielded by not quite so horrible managers to catch up. If you crunch, you end up shipping a product you can, hopefully, be proud of. If you death march, you end up quitting or being fired or seeing your project getting cancelled or seeing your company go under. How do you tell a crunch from a death march while you're in it? It's hard, but here are a few guidelines. If your deadline gets pushed back just before you were supposed to hit it, it might be a death march. If you're working overtime and there aren't clear lists of tasks that need to be done, it might be a death march. For example, we need to work until this milestone is done, death march. Or, we need to work until this milestone is done and there are these items that remain before it will be, crunch. Note, I'm not saying that this clear list of tasks won't grow. It will. Things get forgotten, bugs get revealed, tiny things creep. But there should be a list, and it should get smaller as you progress. Lastly, if your team has shipped a game on time before, it might be a crunch. If your team has never shipped a game on time before, it might be a death march. Here's how we do crunch on the Spider-Man team. Everybody crunches. It's all for one, one for all, whether you like it or not. Although we make exceptions for reasonable circumstances, when we crunch, we all crunch. Usually at a meeting of leads, we'll decide that yes, we need to crunch. Greg John will draft up an email explaining the situation to the team, give the leads a chance to look at it, and then send it out. Some question the wisdom of this mandatory everybody crunches policy. I mean, I got my stuff done, somebody might say, or I'm on top of things, why do I have to stay late? There are a few reasons I like it. First, it's nobody's fault if one person is further behind than the other, except maybe the project managers. Task length is unpredictable, and it's not possible to perfectly level schedules so that everybody is evenly tasked. Second, someone who is done, quote-unquote, can almost always find a way to help. Front-end programmers can do AI and vice versa. Modelers can texture, programmers can script, scripters can test, and so on and so forth. Efficient? No. Having people work outside of their specialties is never efficient. Gets the game done sooner? Hell yeah. Forcing some to work overtime and not others can, in theory, lead to teamicide, as those who are working overtime begin to resent those who don't. It's better for the team to hate the leads than to hate each other. This makes it sound like we discourage voluntary overtime. I mean, people working late just because they feel like it. We don't. Beyond the occasional, it's late, why don't you go home? It's worked for us so far, lastly. Once the project gets very near the end, the last few weeks, and there's really nothing for people to do, the everybody crunches system stops making sense. Then it's really better to send people home and let the SWAT teams and burn squads ship the thing undistracted. Although the details vary, crunch is usually around 10 hours a day on weekdays, 8 hours a day on Saturday. We adjusted the hours some to accommodate the desires of the team, although there are core hours when everybody has to be in. 11 to 7 on long days, 11 to 5 on short days. There is some flexibility. We have clear goals, whether it's these things need to be done for an awesome E3 demo, or these things need to be done before these levels will be considered alpha, or we're fixing as many priority 0 to 3 bugs as we can in the next 10 weeks. Now, catering a team of 50 or 60 is part of the challenge. At that number, it's futile to do individual orders, but better to do massive quantities of pizza or barbecue or fast food. Keeping some variety going is essential if you don't want to drive everybody mad. One of our problems with crunch time is finding time to do personal errands. Activision brought in a laundry service, so laundry was one less thing we had to worry about. TriArc doesn't pay for lunch, but if somebody wants to work through lunch, a producer or an AP will get that person's food for them, even when not in crunch time. We spend maybe a quarter to a third of the project crunching. Most of that comes in the last months. As I understand it, this is less crunching than most other developers I've talked to, and maybe partly why we're pretty good at retaining employees on our team, although the main reason is probably the royalties. Although different employees are motivated by different things, I think a lot of us are motivated, at least to an extent, by cold, sweet cash. Or maybe we just don't like feeling exploited, that our overtime is just going to make the CEO rich. Activision has a decent royalty policy, which helps us worker bees feel like we've got a stake in the big picture. So, although we're not paid overtime, we do come away feeling that we are compensated a little for our overtime by selling more units and making more money. Of course, that's on Spider-Man, which sold truckloads. When working on smaller games, the employees rarely feel as if their efforts are worth it. A profit-sharing plan that ends up distributing no profits may get one game out the door, but all of your employees will quit before the second one is done. And that wraps up another shorty but a goodie from Mr. Jamie Fristrom. A reminder to you all, if you want to read more of his articles, all you have to do is head over to www.gamedevblog.com. My name is Ryan Wienko, your host here at IndustryBroadcast.com, signing off and hoping that once again I brought a little bit more of the collective insight of the gaming industry to your ears.